Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribley. Welcome to another edition of At Issue, where we discuss and debate the critical issues facing the state of Mississippi and how these issues impact you. And we want you to share your opinions and comments with us. Just go to facebook.com/MPB Online News. On Twitter, our handle is @MPB News. Also visit our webpage, mpbonline.org/issue. At issue tonight, the agriculture industry in Mississippi. Many take it for granted, but the statistics are eye-opening. In 2015, the value of agriculture and forestry products was $7.4 billion. The trickle-down value added to the state's economy by ag and forestry was $16.1 billion. There are 37,100 farms in Mississippi and nearly 11 million acres of farmland, plus nearly 20 million acres of forestry land. The top 10 crops produced in Mississippi from 1 to 10 are poultry, forestry, soybeans, cattle, corn, cotton, catfish, rice, horticulture, and hay. When ranked nationally, Mississippi is #1 in catfish production and #3 in pulpwood, sweet potatoes, and cotton. We are joined now by John Campbell, Deputy Commissioner of the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce in Mississippi. We thank you for joining us on At Issue.
Hey, well, thank you. I appreciate you having me.
How important is agriculture to Mississippi?
Tell you, agriculture is Mississippi's #1 industry. It represents an $8 billion a year farm gate. 30% of our population is either directly or indirectly employed in the agriculture industry. So it is Mississippi's #1 industry. It's the driver of our economy and so important to our state.
Let's talk about it. We have a list here of Mississippi's top 10 agriculture commodities. At the top of the list, poultry, followed by forestry, then soybeans. And forestry actually leapfrogged soybeans from 2014 to 2015, right?
That's correct. So, you know, as you name that list off, you can see what a diverse agriculture environment we do have in Mississippi, and our ample land, fertile land, our great climate enables us to grow a multitude of crops. So it is very diverse and interesting and great for us. But as far as the forestry, historically forestry has been our number 2 commodity. In 2014, soybean prices went up considerably, $15, $16 a bushel, and for the first time ever, it took over that number 2 spot, which was great for our soybean farmers. But since then, prices ratcheted down slightly. Around $10 right now a bushel, so it is taken back to the 3rd spot, roughly 2 million acres. So it is still it's the landscape of, particularly through the Delta, you see so much soybeans compared to what you used to see cotton. That forestry is back to the number 2 spot, and shy of a major change in commodity prices will probably stay there.
You mentioned cotton. I think especially a lot of folks outside Mississippi associate Mississippi with cotton, especially when you consider our history. I was a little surprised that it's number 6 on the list. Is it typically higher than that? So
cotton production is one of those very interesting crops. To kind of give you a point of reference, in 2006 we were planting 1.2 million acres of cotton. 2007, that fell well below 1 million acres, and we've never even gotten back close to 1 million acres. We're about 450,000 acres this year. And the unique thing about cotton is different than a grain operation is, you know, if you're growing rice, corn, soybeans, and you want to flip-flop from year to year, you can do that with the equipment, but cotton is so specialized with cotton pickers and planters, and particularly the gins. Once you make that investment in cotton, you've got to stay there. Or when you decide to move to another crop, you lose that infrastructure, and it's hard just to start that again. And again, once the gins shut down, they sit idle for a couple years. You just don't go crank them back up. You've got significant investment to get that going. So once you lose infrastructure, like I said, in some of the areas we have, you really have to build an industry back. But cotton's one of those unique things, different than our grain crop, and we grow some excellent commodities here, and our yields are great. But that cotton, that crop turns over several times in the local economy, where with our grain, you harvest it, typically it goes to a grain elevator and then off on a barge it goes. So you don't have that significant direct impact to a local economy like you do with the cotton production.
Poultry at the top of the list. Is that typical?
It is. Poultry actually, out of that $8 billion, represents a little over $3 billion of that $8 billion. So, and the unique thing about poultry is it's not widespread throughout the state. There's some centralized or localized areas that that's what they do. They grow poultry in those areas, and you know, we've got great Sanderson farms here, amongst some what they call poultry integrators, and then actually you have the growers. They're contract growers, and they grow for the integrators, and really just a thriving market. We ship all over the world. And then, you know, last year we had the scare with avian influenza. Yeah. Luckily, we did not have it here, so we avoided that. We've, across the country, have escaped that, so it's really good. We were doing a lot of preparing, and that could have really been devastating for our industry here in Mississippi.
Tell us about the crop outlook overall this year. How's it looking?
Yeah, so it's been, we got off a little rough. We had a particularly wet spring, got us a little behind. Planting particularly our row crop commodities, corn, soybeans, cotton and rice. Soybean and corn yields look really good. The key to that is, and this is, you know, like the magic 8 ball, no one knows, is what the weather's going to do from here until the end of harvest season. So you can have the best crop, our bumper crop sitting in the field today, and we have a hurricane or significant weather pattern actually be devastating. So we have to be optimistic that we're going to have favorable harvest weather. We can get this crop out of the field, and we do it in a fairly short period of time, and hopefully by November we'll have a significant portion of it out.
The catfish industry in the U.S. has been threatened in recent years by imports from Asia. We traveled to a catfish farm in the Delta to see the work it takes to make Mississippi first in the nation and the world standard for quality catfish. MPB's Mark Rigsby reports.
This is the Noble Farm in Morehead, Mississippi. The family first planted cotton and soybeans 50 years ago. In the mid-'80s, the family began raising catfish.
Through the times, you know, commodity prices changed, and, you know, just we had to start, you know, a little diversification. You know, soybeans wasn't doing good. The price of soybeans went down, price of cotton went down. So we said, hey, everybody else is, you know, building fish ponds to diversify a little bit. So we started, you know, my dad in about the mid-'80s started building fish ponds, and he started with 6 ponds, and we slowly, you know, have grown, you know, through the good times and the bad times, you know, to about 700 acres of water right now, roughly 70 fish ponds.
Will Noble grew up on this farm. He started farming full-time after graduating from Mississippi State.
I really love fish farming. You know, you might ask me that some days and I hate it, but overall I do really like it. You know, it's got its good points and bad points. You know, it's just the fact of growing something, you know, that you start off as, you know, an egg and then grow it to where somebody's eating it, you know, a year or two later. That's just, you know, makes you feel good about what you're doing, you know.
The farm grows and sells fish to catfish farms in surrounding states and sells fish you eat to local processing plants. Noble says prices are good right now. He wouldn't say how much money they make from catfish, but he says it's not bad.
We survive anyway. We keep a name on the mailbox from doing it, you know. And some years not, some years we, you know, do real well. So, you know, that's a toss-up question, pretty much.
Won't give me a dollar amount?
No.
The conversation got serious when asked about Asian countries selling catfish in the U.S.
I guess the import problem is, you know, Vietnam and China, you know, they pretty much grow the same fish we do now, and there's some different breeds of, you know, catfish. But, you know, they don't have to follow really the same guidelines we do, but it's in turn they're getting that in the pipeline now and just started implementing it the last several months.
For many years, U.S. catfish advocates have battled against cheaper imports from Asian countries over questionable farming practices and food safety issues. Back in March, the U.S. Department of Agriculture began a new program to inspect U.S.-raised catfish and foreign-raised catfish to meet safety standards similar to the way the USDA inspects meat and poultry. Barry Kane, the president of the Catfish Farmers of America, released this statement. He says, quote, "This effort has always been about food safety. After years of almost non-existent FDA inspections of imports, placing the health of consumers at risk, we are on the road to raising consumer confidence in the catfish products sold in our stores and our restaurants, end quote. Noble says it comes down to the quality of the catfish and how much it costs to raise them.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it as long as they play fair, you know, but when they can use chemicals and stuff that we can't, you know, that makes it unfair, you know, and especially their labor's a lot cheaper than ours, you know. We have a better product than they do, and if they want to send it over here, that's fine, but as long as they play, you know, by fair rules, well, look at it, you know.
Despite the threat of catfish imports, Noble says farming is his way of life.
And, you know, it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job, 365-day a year, you know, job, and it's real complicated, you know, what we do.
And it also sounds like it's not easy.
Oh, it's not. Versus, you know, we have labor problems too, and government guidelines that we got to follow by, and you know, it's not easy, but you know, we make a living at it, and you know, if it was real easy, everybody'd be doing it. So.
Mark Rigsby, MPB News.
And we're back now with John Campbell. Mississippi still ranks #1 for catfish production, but how have catfish imports impacted the industry and the farmers here?
So that's a great question. It's certainly an interesting issue and very times very complex. We're at about 60% less of the acres, catfish acres, than we were a decade or so ago. We're around 40,000 acres.
Is that all from the threat from the imports?
There's multiple factors: price, feed costs, but the imports have had a significant impact on our production here in Mississippi. And what you've got is a much cheaper product coming into the country, inferior product. And the issue that's at hand right now is, starting in 2008, Senator Cochran worked in our farm bill to shift catfish inspection from FDA to USDA, where USDA inspects all of our other livestock, beef, poultry, hogs. So it was a perfect fit for them to start inspecting this other farm-raised commodity. So we shifted from FDA, and it went in March 2016, from FDA to USDA. To a little back up, kind of give you, paint the picture of FDA's inspection process. They inspect less than 2% of all seafood that's imported into the country, where USDA inspects 100% of it. So through Senator Cochran's work, they shifted that in the farm bill to USDA. March 2016 it started. Within the first couple of weeks, we already had shipments from Vietnam and other countries being sailed from detection of carcinogens being in the shipments. So there was a...
Excuse me, but does this mean then that all of the catfish and catfish-like fish coming into America is now inspected, 100% of it?
It is. We're beginning that process. USDA's taken over, but since then, Senator McCain introduced a Senate Resolution 28 in the U.S. Senate Congressional Review Act. It circumvented the whole committee process. It passed the Senate that would take it away from USDA and give it back to FDA. So our Commissioner of Agriculture, Commissioner Cindy Hyde-Smith, is a very strong advocate of American farmers. And this is about food security for our consumers and equal standards. She got very engaged on this issue, went to Washington, really walked the halls of Congress to make sure when that Senate resolution got to the House that it was not brought up by Paul Ryan. So we've been successful thus far, keeping it in the USDA's purview. It's got to sit on Paul Ryan's desk to the end of the year, and hopefully it just dies there. But again, the importance of that inspection process being a USDA is our farmers are inspected by USDA, and our foreign imports are inspected by USDA and held to the same standards as American fish, American catfish. So we feel like, again, it's consumer protection. You want safe, affordable food supply for your family. And again, we think it's only fair that foreign imports should follow the same standards as a Mississippi or American producer.
And I get that, but what are the differences between fish grown locally and fish that are imported? Are they dangerous, what's coming in?
So there has been a pattern of products being found in imports that are not approved for use in the United States, or FDA and USDA is not approved for our food supply. Their production methods at times are much different than ours. We know ours is safe, ours is clean, it's of the highest standard, and we can't say that for sure about these imports until we start inspecting them at the same level we have through our USDA process.
Immigrant labor is an important component of farming in Mississippi. Farm Bureau is calling for immigration reform to help farmers get workers from outside the country legally without so much red tape. Farm Bureau, the Mississippi Restaurant and Hospitality Association, and Republican State Representative Joel Baumgar of Madison are supporting the nationwide Reason for Reform campaign. It's backed by business leaders who want to see the immigration process streamlined to make it easier for immigrant workers to enter the country to work legally. Mike McCormick is the president of Mississippi Farm Bureau.
We as Americans all have the need to eat, and the process that we're going through with our H-2A workers, our guest worker programs, are causing troubles for our American farmers and our farmers here in Mississippi. The system is broken, and this past spring we went all over the state of Mississippi and talked to our farmers that are using these programs and heard horror stories about their crops rotting in the fields and not being able to get the labor force that they need to get their crops to market. We feel like we have two choices. We have to import our labor, or we'll have to import our food. And the people here in the United States, I do believe, will want our American farmers to produce their food here in the United States. The number of American farmers in the United States has decreased by over 20% in the last 10 years. It's simply impossible for us to work a system without having a guest worker program. Agriculture needs a streamlined, flexible guest worker program that will bring more opportunities for the workers and the farmers. And Mississippi Farm Bureau and farm bureaus across the nation have joined with this effort to ask to have a seat at the table, no matter who is in charge of Congress, to ask that we take part in these conversations to enact a sensible immigration reform.
I spoke earlier with Israel Martinez, Vice President of the Latin American Business Association of Mississippi, about immigrants working in agriculture. Do you know of illegal immigrants working in the agriculture industry in Mississippi right now?
Oh yes, many. There are many people are here without documents, and they work not just in agriculture, but in different areas, hotels, restaurants, but yes, definitely work in the agriculture industry.
How are they still able to get and keep those jobs if they're not here legally?
Well, the farmers and the employers, I guess, they hire them and pay them cash. That's one of the biggest, I guess, issues that we have.
So they don't ever ask. It's don't ask, don't tell. Just give me an honest day's work and we'll call it even at the end of the day.
Correct, but there's another way. Undocumented immigrants, they can get what is called an ITIN number. That's provided by the IRS. And the IRS asks you, if you make some money here in the United States, you can submit that. So some immigrants, they use that and they still pay taxes.
So even though they are not here legally, they still go through government channels and pay taxes on what they earn.
Correct. The IRS always get the money.
What specific changes do you think need to be made, especially to this whole paperwork process, to help these workers who would like to come to this country or who perhaps are already here but not legally? What needs to change specifically to make it easier for them to legally work here, and then everything could be above board and not no money passing hands under the table?
Well, it's unfortunate, but that's the truth. You know, it's actually both parties that control the Congress. You know, the Republicans and immigrants, they don't agree on how this is going to get, you know, it's going to be addressed. But I think that both need to come to an agreement where the 11 million people that are here without documents get some type of permit to work, you know, to get them out of the shadows and to go through the legal process. There are some candidates that say, you know, hey, you know, let's send everybody back. Actually, it's going to hurt the economy and it's going to hurt the families. But to get them out, and start a new process, because right now, as I said, the process is just horrible, it's terrible. And by doing that, the government is going to start, getting all the money, actually, because they get some money, but not all the money that they could get from these immigrants. And immigrants actually will start buying houses. We've seen this here in Jackson. I've seen it. When they have a job, they start buying houses, they start buying cars, and several other things. So that's actually, they improve the economy. And we're talking about 11 million.
What do you say to the argument, and how does it make you feel to hear someone who says that if we have a lot of immigrants coming from other countries and filling these positions, it's pushing Americans, native residents of this country, out of those jobs, that that immigrants are taking jobs away from people who were born here or who are here legally?
Well, I disagree with that. I've seen that. There are plenty of jobs, first of all. Sometimes they're the local people, or, those who do not have a job. They don't want to go to, a hard job. That's actually what happens. And, these immigrants, that are not taking these jobs from these people, Those jobs are available. It happens that, they come and take it. Well, it's because it was available.
There are a number of undocumented workers, people who live here in the United States and in Mississippi. Do you think if the path toward legal citizenship were less complicated, that we'd have fewer folks here illegally who want to be working, productive members of the society?
Definitely. If there are, easier steps, they will come, with documents. And what happens is that there are many opportunities to work here, and they come and they stay here because actually it's hard to come. So if things were easier, they will go back there often and create jobs in their country, not just in Mexico, but everywhere.
And we're talking about two different things here, whether the path to citizenship, the path that you're still on, and the other one being just to come to America legally to work. But they're both difficult, are they not? Correct.
And I guess there's some misconception from the local people, and this is what I've seen in my 13 years, is that a lot of people think that all the immigrants want to become a citizen, and that's not the case. A lot of immigrants, actually, they just want to come to work, and they want to go back to their country. Because that's their family, that's where you grow up, that's where you have your friends, etc. So right now the process is difficult. They end up staying here without documents.
John Campbell now back with us. Mississippi Farm Bureau is calling for immigration reform, saying that agriculture as an industry depends on immigrants for the labor they provide, and they say that any delays in processing paperwork and regulations would be a problem for the industry. What's the agency's position on that?
Yeah, so migrant workforce is critical to agriculture. To give you an example, our sweet potato growers in Vardaman, that's where we grow 95+% of our 24,000 acres of sweet potatoes. If those Vardaman sweet potato growers hired every person in that area during harvest season, they would still be a deficit for farm workers. So we've got to work with our government to find a way through that we are able to get affordable, efficient, seasonal workers into this country that are legal. And through our H-2A worker program that is for your farm workers, we can do that, but with Farm Bureau and other partners have been working with the administration to make sure that process gets to moving along. It's been a little slow, a little more cumbersome than our ag community can stand right now to get that workforce in place in a timely fashion. But without that migrant worker, we cannot produce agriculture and feed this country and this world as we are doing it today.
How do the current laws and regulations affect local farmers?
So our current laws, again, there is a structure. We've got our H-2A worker program that is for farm workers. We've got an H-2B worker program that is for your tourism, your restaurants, your food processors. So we've got the structure there. The problem with it is the bureaucracy and the paperwork in that structure that is preventing it from moving along as fast as it needs to. And that's the challenge. The structure's there, the laws are there, but the process is so slow right now that it's really impacting our growers in a negative manner.
In a way that they can't get the workers they need soon enough?
They can't get them soon enough, and and in enough numbers to do the job we need to do.
So what would change that? Would it take a federal law change to eliminate some of the paperwork, perhaps?
So the law is there. Again, the law is there. It's like, it's certainly as any law, we work on some things to strengthen it. It's more just the process, the paperwork process, moving it along through the system, eliminating maybe some redundant paperwork, some processes. And the key to that is making sure that when those decisions are made about that process, that the stakeholders, the farmers, are at the table helping develop the process. And I think that's what we've really been missing thus far, is that person that exactly knows, or knows exactly what needs to happen to move it along. And there's just been a disconnect.
John Campbell, Deputy Commissioner of the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce, thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you, and appreciate you having me.
For more information on agriculture in Mississippi, go to our website, mpbonline.org/issue. You can find the full-length interviews we conducted with guests on this program, as well as additional information and links. But for now, we are out of time. We hope you will join us again next week for another edition of At Issue. Good night.